last week he covered book one, chapter one, and that ended with the feast that Xerxes was having, the 7-day feast. And then when he had wanted to put his queen on display, she didn't want to get involved. She didn't want to do that. He got mad. And so we're going to start into chapter 2. But first, I want to go over the timeline. I think you all got the sheet here. And I figure the book of Esther starts back in Babylon. And in the scripture, when it just sits all by itself. And apparently, when they were compiling the Bible we know today, they didn't really know where to put Esther. They had it actually in various locations through the years and settled on where it is now. But to say, anyway, I want to go over the history. And like I say, I think the story starts back in Babylon with the captivity. And you're all familiar with that. You know, God was judging Israel. They were misbehaving. He sent the Babylonians to capture them. And there was 3 deportations. The first one was about 600 AD, or about 80 BC. I've seen dates from 605, 597. But there was the 3 separate deportations. And this was the time of Daniel in the lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their fiery furnace. And now in 538, Babylon was conquered by Cyrus of Persia. And by all accounts, Cyrus was actually a pretty decent guy, you know, for the kings of those days. But in 537, he issued a decree and he allowed the Jews to return. And so about 49,000 returned with Zerubbabel. And this was from 537 to 516 BC. And at that time, back in Jerusalem. And this is all in the book of Ezra, chapters 1 to 6. And then that's where the book of Esther comes in, and after chapter 6 of Ezra. Okay. And then the return of the Jews, the other 2 trips back to Israel with Ezra and Nehemiah comes later, after Esther. Okay, with Ezra it was in 458 BC, and then Nehemiah, he rebuilt the wall. That was 444 to 425, the return there. And then Xerxes, I call him Xerxes, you know, I refer to him as Xerxes, but that's his Greek name, but Ahasuerus became king of Persia in 486 BC. The book of Esther starts 3 years later, 483, with that 7-day feast, and sounds like a 7-day drunk from the accounts, when they're drinking wine for a week. But that was his third year of his reign. Now, secular history at that time, Xerxes had this feast. He was planning his invasion of Greece. And this feast was to celebrate the starting of that planning. Okay, that invasion led to the Battle of Thermopylae that probably a lot of you are familiar with. That was the 300 Spartans. And it was part of a war that went on for 30 or 40 years. His predecessor Cyrus was in Greece. And but then Xerxes returned from Greece after a defeat. They went through Thermopylae, they defeated Athens, and then they were defeated. And he returned in 479 BC. And it says he turned to his harem for consolation at that time. And that's where Esther comes in the picture. That starts chapter 2. And then it goes on, we'll get into later weeks, you know, where Haman comes before Xerxes with his plan to kill Jews after Mordecai doesn't bow down to him. And then Esther goes before Xerxes and prepares the banquet, and Haman is hanged. But the whole book of Esther takes maybe 12 years, 13 years. So that is that. And one thing when I was going over this, I was wondering, a question I'm going to throw out to you all. With the Babylonian captivity, there was 3 separate trips from Israel to Babylon. When they returned, there was 3 separate trips back to Israel. You know, number 3 keeps popping up. You got Jesus in the tomb 3 days. You got Jonah in the fish 3 days. And I don't know, it's a higher pay grade than me, but I don't know, I'm wondering if there's a connection, if all that, I just run it by Alan a few minutes ago, and any thoughts there? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out. If there's there, because I don't believe anything's in Scripture by accident, you know.
It's probably the 3 wise men that decided what on to sleep.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that means anything. But anyway, yeah, Esther chapter 2. Now, okay. Oops, I didn't get my Bible up here. And I want to go back and read a little bit of. This is a fine print Bible. Excuse me, I'm going to go get something with a little harder. Huh? No. I don't have the right glasses. I brought the wrong glasses, I guess. Okay, this is the end of chapter 1 in Esther. I start about verse 19, and of course the king was angry over this business with the queen not performing, and if it pleased the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes that it is not to be altered. Vasa, the queen, come no more before the king Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. And when the king's decree, which he shall make, which shall be published throughout his empire, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Missun. Okay, for he sent letters to all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people in their language, that the man should bear rule in his own home, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. And now we go to chapter 2. Okay. And Vashti's successor is sought. Okay. After these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what had been decided regarding her, which we just read. Then the king's attendants who served him said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king, and that the king may appoint overseers in all the provinces of his kingdom, and have them bring every beautiful young virgin to the citadel of Susa, to the harem, into the custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women. Let their cosmetics be given to them. Let the young woman who pleases the king be queen in place of Vashti. and the suggestion pleased the king, and he did accordingly. There was a Jew at the citadel of Susa whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shimi, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been taken with the exiles, who had been deported with Jeconiah, king of Judah, who Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had deported. He was guardian to Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father nor mother. Now the young woman was beautiful of face and form, and when her father and her mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. Okay, and so now they introduced Mordecai, and Mordecai was quite an exceptional man, I believe. He brought up Esther very well. It doesn't say when her parents died, but I'm assuming very, very young. They're not mentioned, so he raised her all her life. And it seems that he did a fine job. She knew Jewish history. She was loyal to her people. I believe she knew that. And she was obviously a courageous lady, but she was also it seems like she had a humility about her. And he was loyal to his job. I mean, he's spent every day at the gate while she was in the harem. So it came about when the command and decree of the king were heard, and many young ladies were gathered to the citadel of Susa in the custody of Haggai, that Esther was taken to the king's palace into the custody of Haggai, who was in charge of the women. Now the young lady pleased him and found favor with him. So he quickly provided her with cosmetics and food, and gave 7 choice female attendants from the king's palace, and transferred her and her attendants to the best place in the harem. Here we go. Okay. Now Esther did not reveal her people or her kindred, because Mordecai had instructed that she was not to reveal them. So she's not telling them she's a Jew. And they're keeping that a secret. Now why, it doesn't say, but I'm assuming that it's, they were prisoners, they were captives in Babylon. Now they're in Persia, they're still in the same position, I guess, socially, probably looked down upon. They're allowed to leave, so they do have a freedom. I really don't know if they're really slaves or not. Maybe somebody's got an opinion there, but I mean, they are free to leave. But it's my impression that they would be looked down upon as a second-class citizen. And I don't know if anybody's got thoughts.
This would have been the beginning of what you would have considered the diaspora.
Dispersed. So some of them did return from captivity at the end of the captivity of 7 years, but some of them stayed. And it seems like Mordecai had the ability to move around freely. Whether that was because he had been released from bondage and he had previously been a slave, it could be, or he may have still have been a slave. But in those times, slaves were treated much differently than, say, the cattle slavery we had in the U.S.
Correct, yeah.
So you were trusted a lot more to go places and do things than what you were during that time period. So I don't know what his particular circumstances are, but being that he was able to go outside the courtyard where they were keeping Esther freely, it suggests that he had some freedoms that maybe some other Jews at that time did not have. And the reason why he may want to have hidden that is because he knew that there was going to be, I'm not by any means saying that he was a prophet, but he probably had a feeling that something was going to happen soon. I don't think that he had anything revealed. There's no revelation within the book of Esther. save their people from this plot against the Jews. But nowhere in there is he giving some sort of divine message from God. So he is acting probably on some good judgment. You know, they've had three deportations occurred. So he knows that it could get worse, it may get better, but in case it gets worse, it's probably better to keep her heritage a secret and maybe be able to use that as leverage at some point.
So, yeah, good points, because he was, and what you're saying, because he was at the gate every day to keep tabs, and he was able to get messages and converse with her somehow. It doesn't say, but he got the message to her about the plot against Xerxes with those two guys, and he was able. So he was able to get messages to her somehow. So there was a certain level of trust in there. He had a certain. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Okay. And it goes on. Now every day Mordecai walked back and forth in front of the court of the harem, to learn how Esther was and what was happening to her. Okay. Now when it came the turn for each young woman to go into King Ahasuerus, okay, after the 12 months under the regulations for the women, for the days of their beauty treatment were completed as follows: 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with balsam oil and the cosmetics for the women. Okay. Now at this point, another year has passed from when Xerxes returned. Ahasuerus returned, and now the young woman would go into the king in this way. Anything that she desired was given to her to take from the take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening she would enter, and in the morning she would return to the second harem, to the custody of Shagaz, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the concubines. She would not go into the king again unless the king delighted in her and was summoned by name. Okay. Now when it came the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter, okay, came to go to the king. Okay, she did not request anything except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the women, advised. Now this, I think, goes to Esther's qualities, her humility or modesty, because there's a lot of women there, and I'm sure most of those girls, most women, want to be queen. They've got all the cosmetics and the oil and beauty treatments, so some of them are going to take advantage of that. They want to impress the king. They want to be queen. Esther's not doing that. She's just taking whatever he gives her. She's not going overboard. So is that a humility in her, maybe? Any thoughts? I don't know. Or she just doesn't care about being queen. It's not that important. I don't know. Anybody got any ideas? Yeah.
Sounds like she was more conservative when it comes to morals than some of the others.
Could very well be, yeah.
What does it say?
Oh, she was more concerned about her morals. I mean, I guess she wasn't a flashy person. She didn't go overboard with the makeup, and I'm sure some of those gals did. I'm sure some of those ladies went nuts with it. And they say they were trying to impress the king. They wanted to be queen. Okay. So Esther was taken into King Ahasuerus in his royal palace on the 10th month, which is the 10th of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. So that puts us now at 479 BC. Okay. The king loved Esther more than all the women, and she found favor and kindness with him more than all the virgins. so that when he set the royal turban on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti, made her queen instead of Vashti. Okay. Then the king held a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his officials and servants, and he made a holiday for the provinces and gave gifts in proportion to the king's bounty. Okay. Now, when the virgins were gathered together for the second time, then Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Okay. Esther still had not revealed her relatives or her people, just as Mordecai had instructed her. For Esther did what Mordecai told her, just as she had under his care. Okay. Now, in those days, while Mordecai was sitting by the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's officials from those who had guarded the door, became angry and sought to attack King Ahasuerus. Now, this is the New American Standard. What this is from. If you go to the King James, instead of them guarding the door, it refers to them as chamberlains, which would be a high-level government official, maybe like a cabinet position in our government. You know, some say it's a treasurer, but a very he is more of an inner circle with the king, very, very close to the king, rather than a guy guarding the door. So, I don't know, just different biblical translations. And there they say that they're going to lay hands on the king instead of attack the king. It's kind of, okay. But the plot became known to Mordecai, and he informed Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in Mordecai's name. So the king knew that this information came from Mordecai at that time. And it kind of goes to what Alan was saying, that, or not Alan, Russell was saying that the Mordecai was kind of entwined in there because he had contact with the guards. They would have been keeping this plot secret. They're not broadcasting that. He found out about it. So he had to have been in close contact with these guys on a daily basis. They trusted him. Or maybe he was just a fixture and they ignored him because he was there all the time. They didn't pay him any attention. I don't know. But anyway, Esther told the king in Mordecai's name about the plot. When the plot was investigated and found to be so, they were both hanged on a wooden gallows. And it was written in the book of Chronicles in the king's presence. And that comes into play a couple chapters down the road, which obviously we're not going to get to, but the fact that it's written down in the Chronicles. Xerxes has a sleepless night and he reads the Chronicles and finds that out. And so, anyway, that's chapter 2. Any thoughts? Okay. And I had some notes here on some of the characters here. Okay, we got Mordecai. He raised Esther like his daughter. And I consider him a very dedicated and loyal man. He sat by the gate every day. And like I said before, he taught Esther very well as far as her Jewish history. And then Queen Esther, I consider her to be a modest, humble. She didn't glorify herself, with the makeup business. And keep in mind, with all this going on, okay, she was not yet 20 years old. She was still a teenager. Oops. Okay. Well, we can go to. Well, we got a few minutes. We can start. Yeah, we can start on verse 3 or in chapter 3. Now, after these events, King Ahasuerus honored Haman, the son of Hammedatha, okay, that Andrusite and promoted him and established his authority over all the officials who were with him. All the king's servants who were at the gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had commanded regarding him. But Mordecai neither bowed down nor paid homage. Then the king's servants who were at the gate said to Mordecai, "Why are you violating the king's command?" And, why didn't Mordecai bow down to them? It may go back to like with Daniel refusing to worship, refusing to worship somebody else besides God. He's not going to worship this guy. And that's my thoughts anyway. What? Haman's got a problem with pride, yeah. Yeah, he's got a big problem with pride. And Mordecai is not going to worship him. Okay. Then the king's servants who were at the gate said to Mordecai, "Why are you violating the king's command?" Now when they had spoken daily to him, he would not listen to them, but they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's reason would stand, for he had told them he was a Jew. So now he tells them he's a Jew, there's only one God, I'm not going to worship Haman. And this is just, Evan was saying with Haman's pride. Okay, when Haman saw that Mordecai neither bowed down nor paid homage to him, Haman was filled with rage. But he considered it beneath his dignity to kill Mordecai alone, for they had told him who the people of Mordecai were. So Haman sought to annihilate all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, who were found throughout the kingdom of Ahasuerus. So he's mad at the one guy, he's going to kill everybody. Yeah. Okay. So in the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, that is the lot, was cast before Haman from day to day, from month to month, until the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. So what he's doing is he's casting lots to find out what's the best day or best time to kill the Jews. Some sort of, and Russell probably knows that it's some sort of a gambling, that we'd call it like throwing dice or something, but something along those lines.
Game of chance. I mean, they used it even at Christ's crucifixion to determine who would get the garments of Christ.
Yeah.
They cast lots. Sometimes they would use it. Some of their witches and magicians in different realms would use this as divining what should be. This was some
Sort of fortune telling.
Fortune telling thing.
Honestly, they were talking to demons.
Or they thought they were, or they could have been, or they thought they were.
Yeah.
When the dice come up a certain way, that's the right day to kill the Jews.
Yeah.
It's like flipping a coin.
What?
It's like flipping a coin that we're
Yeah.
doing today.
Yeah, same idea. It's just, and so maybe so the supernatural would help them in accomplishing that task if they get the right day.
I think in this context, he was hoping for some sort of supernatural being to tell him when to do this. But for the majority of it, casting lots for them, it was just a game of luck. But like I said, some people did actually use it back then to try to
Communing with the spirit world to find out what they should do. Kind of like we have Ouija boards today.
Okay.
You're familiar with Ouija
Tarot cards and
Yeah. So.
in the same way there, you don't know. Most likely you're just being foolish and it's all chance, but at the same time,
Good chance of that, yeah.
This is my opinion, it does not speculate on that at all. I think that he was looking for some sort of supernatural,
I find it interesting that he just didn't go ahead and do it, because that's what he wanted to do. He's got this other pathway to somebody else tell him what to do, or some supernatural.
That's what swayed me to that opinion.
Yeah, he didn't.
Looking for something that, from the gods.
Yeah.
tell him what to do. But,
Yeah.
he wasn't getting any answer. If he wasn't getting an answer from the God of heaven, he was getting an answer from the demon or what. That was it.
Yeah.
But also leaving it up to a game of chance is a sign of how casually they treated destroying all of these people.
That's a possibility.
Okay, yeah.
They're not
Like, no, we'll just flip a coin over. It'd be like a sign they didn't really think too highly of this whole group that they can destroy.
Yeah, and that would make sense, because they were captives in Babylon. Social status probably didn't really elevate all that much. They were probably still somewhere near there.
Pilate was kind of hesitant to the people in regards to crucifying Christ, so, it's kind of that same casual thought in mind, Pilate wasn't real certain what to do, and neither was the situation here, the Jews, so.
Maybe he didn't want the responsibility of the
Yeah, he
Yeah.
pushed it off, right?
Okay. Okay, where are we? Okay, then Hanan said to the king, Ahasuerus, okay, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the peoples, in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all the other people, and they do not comply with the king's laws. So it is not in the king's interest to let them remain. If it is pleasing to the king, let it be decreed that they be eliminated, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who carry out the king's business to put back in the king's treasures. That's interesting, because 10,000 talents, that was a truckload of money. That was a massive, massive sum, many, the talent was many years' pay, and this was just a huge amount of money. But apparently he's paying it to the guys that kill the Jews, and they're going to kick it back to the king. It's kind of what it says here.
My scriptures, 375 tons of silver. That's a lot.
That's a lot of silver. Yeah, that's a massive amount. And I had it written down there, the math on how many years' wages it was. And it's a massive amount. And he's going to pay that to the guys that kill the Jews, but apparently they're going to pay that back to the king. Is his plan? So he's bribing the king to kill the Jews.
In my notes there, I had the annual income for the empire was 14,500 talents. So basically, he's going to pay 2/3 of the annual income of the entire empire.
That's the gross domestic product.
In terms of our nation, you're going to pay whatever it is.
How many trillions was it?
2/3. So that's a lot of money. That's kind of crazy. Okay.
Then the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, okay, the Agagite, enemy of the Jews. And the king said to Haman, "The silver is yours, and the people also. Do with them what you please."
And he had multiple wives, so that money didn't go very far.
You got a point there, yeah. And
So,
Okay. Yeah, and that's really about as far as I got. Okay. Okay. That's the second bell, okay? And that's about as far as I got anyway, so. Is Kevin can continue on next week.
Jimmy, are you nervous?
Huh?
Nervous?
I don't know, it's just
The mic's getting a little nervous.
like that. It's hard to stay still sometimes. Thank you.